Chapter 7. The horde of resurrected demon worshippers rushed toward the carriage. The hooves of the horses kicked up clouds of dust as Chloe urged them to accelerate. Visibility on the ground soon diminished as the dust rose higher. "Get out of here," whispered Sig as he watched the carriage. To his surprise, the carriage turned in a wide circle. Demon worshippers began tripping over one another as they rushed toward the carriage. "What is she doing?" whispered Kirana. Jonathan smiled. "I bet she's doing whatever Lucas tells her," said Jonathan. "What is he telling her?" asked Sig nervously. "They're reducing visibility," said Jonathan. "That will give advantages to Row 82, and also me." "What about you, Stephanie?" asked Sig. Stephanie seemed weary and disconnected. She finally shrugged in response. The awkwardness was interrupted by a huge shriek. Row 82 was in motion. Jonathan grabbed his key and closed his eyes. The mind realm was free of the clouds of dust that blinded the demon worshippers in the actual world. He reached out to Lizard in his mind. "Lizard, randomly attacking them will confuse them," he said. "Lucas already said that," said Lizard with air quotes. Jonathan laughed and began searching for the apprentice. "Catherine Page is in danger," shouted Jonathan. "Hurry back this way." Of course, with this lie, he was directing them to the pit that had been prepared earlier. The simple minds of these acolytes were even easier to sway with the dust and confusion that Row 82 and Lizard were providing. Finally, Jonathan found the apprentice. "Catherine Page is in danger," said Jonathan. His mind was a bit stronger. "We were warned about unconventional tactics," said the apprentice. "My instructions are to pursue Chloe Baldwin." Jonathan rubbed his head, disappointed that his technique had not succeeded. "A child?" asked the apprentice. Jonathan turned. Lucas slowly approached the apprentice. He had a sheet wrapped around his face to reduce the dust coming into his nose and mouth. The apprentice pulled out a knife and rushed toward Lucas. In an amazing display of skill, Lucas whirled around and kicked the knife out of the apprentice's hand. In a flurry of attacks, Lucas hit a series of nerve points on the apprentice. Though the demon worshipper flung his arms about to attempt to block Lucas, he might as well have been standing still, as Lucas disabled him and he collapsed onto the ground. Row 82 rushed toward him and scooped him up. In only a few moments, he had carried him to the pit and tossed him in. Jonathan's eyes ceased glowing as the dust began to settle. Demon worshippers were stumbling over one another chaotically as the carriage came to a halt. The handful of demon worshippers that had been assigned to watch over Sig choked as the dust dissipated, but when they realized that their entire force had been overcome, they looked at one another nervously. "Too bad," said Sig as he lowered his shield. "You picked the wrong side." Within moments, Jonathan, Kirana, and Sig had disabled the remaining demon worshippers and thrown them into the pit. Chloe pulled the carriage up. The maids inside the carriage stared in shock and awe at how efficiently the divine key-bearers had handled the necromancer's minions. "Everyone okay?" asked Sig with a wide smile. "Thanks to the quick thinking of young Mr. Flynn," said Chloe with a smile. "Then let's head to the hospital before their forces recover," said Sig. "Hopefully the others have been successful," said Lucas. Of course he had no way of knowing that Lincoln and Savannah Thomas had been captured by the rest of Catherine Page forces and been dragged into a secret compound where they were bound hand and foot. The uncomfortable cool of the hard stone floor on which their chairs rested was stained with blood in various places, and they feared the worst as the large wooden door creaked open and then slammed shut. Lincoln immediately recognized their captor. "Catherine Page!" shouted Lincoln. A thin, green-cloaked woman with a skull mask slowly approached Lincoln and Savannah, who were bound to chairs and separated from their divine keys. They struggled against their bonds, but the cords that fastened them were too strong for them to break free. "You won't get away with this," warned Savannah as Catherine stepped forward. "Others are coming for us." "If you release us now," said Lincoln confidently, "I am sure we can extend leniency. If you do not, I cannot guarantee your safety." "You could never guarantee my safety," said Catherine as she removed her hood and mask. Lincoln and Savannah gasped as they saw her face. "No," whispered Savannah. "It's not possible," whispered Lincoln. Though they had hunted demon worshippers for years, and they had the names of the members of Archdemon's Hand, they had not associated them with faces. They knew this woman. "What's the matter, Daddy?" asked Catherine. "Does seeing my face displease you so?" Tears welled up in Lincoln's eyes. Savannah struggled harder against her bonds. "What have you done?" whispered Lincoln. "That's an audacious question, Father," said Catherine angrily. "You know, I asked something similar when you and Mother cast me out in favor of that sniveling little blob of flesh." "Stop it!" shouted Savannah as tears dripped down Lincoln's face. Catherine drew a knife and slashed at Savannah's arm, causing her to shriek in pain. Blood oozed through the cut sleeve in her dress and gave the illusion that the thin laceration on her arm was widening as it slowly seeped out. "Just me," pled Lincoln as he looked into Catherine's eyes. "I did this to you. She had nothing to do with it." "Shut up!" shouted Catherine as she slashed into Lincoln's arm. He lowered his head and ignored the pain. Catherine grabbed a clump of hair on the top of his head and yanked it upwards to force eye contact. "I'm sorry," whispered Lincoln. "Not as sorry as you will be," said Catherine as she pressed her knife against Lincoln's throat. "You broke your promise." "I assumed that you were the innocent victim. I thought I could save you," whimpered Lincoln. "You could have!" screamed Catherine. "But Mother knew better. She agreed to take you in. We cared for you as if you were our own daughter," said Lincoln. "But then you had your own daughter!" screamed Catherine as she sliced into Lincoln again. "And I was cast away for her safety." Tears rolled down Lincoln's cheek. "Just not far enough, murderer!" thundered Savannah. Catherine spun around and glared at Savannah. "It's true," Catherine whispered in a frighteningly calm voice. "I was a bit unstable. But I tried hard." Catherine slowly walked towards Savannah. "A normal person does not have to try not to murder an innocent woman and her baby," hissed Savannah angrily. Catherine tilted her head as if to consider what Savannah had said. After a moment, she rushed toward her and plunged her knife into Savannah's chest. "No!" shouted Lincoln as tears streamed down his face. He began kicking and throwing his weight back and forth to try and free his hands and feet, but the bonds that tied him down held fast. His chair crashed down on its side, and his head slammed against the stone floor. His eyesight blurred as he strained to stay conscious and ignore the throbbing pain in his head. He vaguely heard a door swing open, and before long a group of cloaked men rushing into the room and propping him back up. He sobbed as he looked over and saw Savannah's head slump down. "Bring in a girl, a 9-year-old, ordered Catherine. One of the cloaked men brought a frightened girl into the room. "Close the door," said Catherine. One of her acolytes obeyed her command, and the door creaked and then slammed shut. "Come here, little girl," said Catherine with a smile. The girl timidly approached. "I used to be like you," said Catherine softly, "only they didn't feed me nearly as often. Tell me, are they giving you enough to eat?" The girl nodded nervously. Catherine smiled. "I'm glad," she said. "It's good to help other people." She turned and pointed at Savannah, who was still gushing blood and strapped to her chair. "This woman is hurt," said Catherine. The girl was shocked at the sight of her blood and began shivering with fear and shock. Catherine turned back to her. "Please don't be afraid. Don't you think we should help her?" she asked with a smile. The girl timidly smiled and nodded. "There's a good girl," said Catherine. "What is your name?" The girl paused and tried to open her mouth. It was clear that she did not want to speak, but she felt like she should. Before any words could come out of the little girl's mouth, Catherine shoved her knife into the girl's chest, and her small body slumped down onto the stone floor. "Oh, wait," said Catherine. "I don't care." "You have become a monster," whispered Lincoln angrily. "Have I?" said Catherine with a soft laugh as she gripped the black key that dangled from a chain about her neck. She touched the head of the girl she had just killed, then touched Savannah's forehead. To Lincoln's surprise, Savannah coughed blood and then opened her eyes. "What happened?" gasped Savannah. "Killing you gave me a tremendous amount of pleasure," said Catherine as she tilted her head and widened her eyes. "It is too late for me to kill Emma or baby Elizabeth again, but thanks to the power of demon resurrection, I am going to kill you over and over again." "Stop it!" shrieked Lincoln. Of course he could do nothing as Catherine plunged her knife into Savannah's chest again. The necromancer laughed as Savannah slumped down in her chair a second time. "Stop, please!" shouted Lincoln. "What must I do to make you stop? What do you want? What do you even want?" Catherine pulled the knife out of Savannah and turned to Lincoln. She calmly walked over to him. "What do I want?" asked Catherine in a low, sincere tone. Lincoln tried to mask the pain and anger on his face and keep his composure. Catherine turned to one of her acolytes. "I want another little girl," she said.